Hi everyone, and welcome to ACTi's ENR third generation setup webinar. Okay, in this webinar we're going to talk a little bit more about setting up the advanced functions of the ENR along with the general system setup of the ENR G3. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, and you should see the live view of our ENR G3 with 4 different cameras on it. All right, the webinar we did right before this, we did a lot of the basic features of the live and the playback. So we're going to go a little more into the setup, all right? So the setup is accessible from the live view page. It is located in the bottom left corner of the interface, all right? So you'll see the gear icons here. This is for the system setup, all right? So these are to toggle in between the actual ENR itself. So even with this power button, this is where you would log out, this is where you reboot the system, this is where you can shut it down, okay? This is the system setup of the ENR. If you need the actual camera settings, okay, setting up the cameras, their schedule, their motion, their resolution bit rate, all of that, what you need to do is you need to right-click on the camera and click Setup here. This is the camera setup, not the system setup, all right? So for the system setup, we can go ahead and click on that icon here, and you'll be able to see a similar interface to what we had in the previous ENRs, all right? So here's system, network, storage, so on and so forth, okay? So if we ever ask you what version of firmware you're using on your ENR, this is where you can find it under System, Information. The firmware here is 50018. You can also find it by clicking on the letter I here in the bottom right corner, all right? Okay, the first thing I want to go over, though, before we get into the actual system setup, is a little bit more about the camera setup, okay? So if we right-click on the camera, we go into the setup function here. We went over the video settings, schedule, and motion detection, but let's talk about this event tab here. All right, so we allow you to set up event responses for individual cameras, all right? So depending on various functions that the camera itself supports, you can have the ENR facilitate various responses depending on the event that you choose. So for every camera, there will always be responses that you can set up for it based on the motion, based on digital input, network loss, as long as the camera supports, digital input functions. For our analytic cameras, you can also have various responses based on the analytics that the camera has, all right? So let's go ahead and take a look. So for example, if I want to have a particular response to motion in region number 1, all right, my first motion box, all I have to do is highlight the event, click on this edit icon here, and you will see the various events responses that you can have the system do based on that particular event. So let's say there's motion in region 1 when there really should not be. You can have, if you have one, right, a PTZ camera go to a particular preset point for a certain amount of time, and then afterwards go back to wherever it was originally looking, or maybe even a second entrance that you need to cover. Based on where that motion occurred, okay? You can send an email to yourself. You can attach a snapshot. You can trigger a digital output. Let's say there was an alarm connected to a particular camera. You can always trigger that as well. You can send a URL command to a particular camera or to a particular server. And last but not least, you can notify this ANS server, okay? So our ANS server is our mobile client texting server, all right? So you can receive text notifications through your mobile client based on certain events that are occurring. Your mobile client on your phone, it is supported for iOS, it is supported for Android. Your app does not have to be open in order to receive these texts, okay? But you do have to set up a couple other things in order for this ANS server to work. Same thing for the SMTP, and those I will go over shortly, okay? But just so you know, we do allow you to send text notifications based on certain events, all right? So, so this is where you can set up the events for individual cameras, and make sure after you set up these events, okay, you need to allow the ENR to tell the camera to handle these events. So under your schedule tab here, you'll see where there's an event handling schedule. As long as you have diagonal lines, the camera is allowed to handle those events during that time. If you do not want it to handle events, you'll see that the diagonal lines go away and you get just, you know, the block colors, okay? So make sure if you do set up an event for the camera, you come into the schedule and you make sure event handling is on. By default, it is on, okay? So you should be okay for that, but in case things are not working, that's the first thing you want to check, okay? All right, so that's the event tab for the individual camera, okay? All right, let's talk about the dual stream function within the camera. So for every camera, there is at least 2 streams that you can use. Some of the cameras, based on the model, have 3 streams, and you can check all this under the specs of the camera on our website. Okay, so if you're not sure where that is, go to www.acti.com. When you are on that main page, there are some very nice quick links. If you come into the product selector here, it will go ahead and give you a list of all of the cameras. You can type in certain models, filter it out. If you click on the spec, this is where you can see how many streams a particular camera has, okay? So, for example, this one, for the multi-streaming, it does have 2 streams, okay? If it has 3, it'll say 3. All right, so back to this. So when you add the camera in, okay, it will always, by default, show you stream 1 on the live view and be recording stream 1 as well. But on the ENR G3, we have this option now where you can tell it to record actually both stream 1 and stream 2, okay? One of the reasons that you might want to do this for your customer is a lot of times customers are in very bandwidth limited environments. It takes them a long time in order to get their cameras to populate and the playback for the playback to populate, playback to playback. And so in order to make that faster, you can actually have them use stream 2 in the playback so that they can quickly find what they need and actually still export stream 1, the higher quality, okay? So so if you want to have that set up, you can. You can tell it not to record at all if you just care about your storage space the most, but you can also have it be recording stream 2. So once you tell it to be recording stream 2, you'll see that the stream 2 options do pop up, okay? So you'll see stream 2, we do cap off the resolution. It's never as high as stream 1, just so that customers are able to populate it faster on their PCs, on their phones, etc. Okay, so again, make sure your bit rate is comparable to your resolution. If your resolution is 1280 by 720, if you multiply that together, it's about 1.3 million, 1.3 megapixels, so your bit rate should be comparable to that, maybe 1.2, 1.5. Okay, your bitrate mode can be set on variable as long as you can cap off your maximum bitrate. If you do not see an option to cap it off, make sure your bitrate mode is constant, and then you set your bitrate to something comparable to your resolution again. Okay. All right, so when you do that and you allow it to record both stream 1 and stream 2, what you can do is you can go into your playback, all right? and you'll see, for example, on my E24, I do have that function set up where I am able to see either stream 1 or stream 2. So what I do is so right now you can see the quality is kind of poor because it is streaming across stream 2 right now for me. If I just want to see it in stream 1 instead, right-click on your footage, click on the toggle stream, and we'll go right back over to stream 1. Okay, and so when you export your video, all right, you'll see that on my E24, I have the option to either export out my stream 1 or my stream 2, should you want to export out the lower stream. Okay, you can also toggle the stream on the live view as well. So if we go into the live view, let's say I want to go ahead and just view stream 2 just so that it loads faster, not using that much bandwidth, etc. You can go ahead and toggle that stream. So as you can see, the quality is very low right now just because my bit rate doesn't actually match correctly. So, but again, if you can always, you don't have to use a super low resolution. Okay, I think this camera's on a super low one. You can use something like 1.3 instead of the full like 5 megapixel, okay, and that way the quality will be a little bit better, but again, you won't be using as much bandwidth, it'll load faster on their phones, etc. Okay, I have it really low just so that you guys can see the difference between when I have it on stream 1 and stream 2, all right? Okay, so that is how to use that dual stream, toggling that stream on the live view and on that playback. Okay? All right. So another setting within the camera itself that I want you guys to be aware of is under the Schedule tab. So we can have full-time recording, meaning it records all the time when you tell it to. Event recording, it records only based on motion, right? But we also have this function called the event speed-up recording. So if your camera is on event speed-up recording and it's in blue, what it's doing is it will record all the time at 1 frame per second, but if it sees an event, such as motion, such as digital input, etc., it will bump up the frame rate to a much higher frame rate that you set up, okay? So, for example, if I want my E39 to have some speed-up recording, I can go into the video settings, all right, and I can go ahead and set it up for that event speed-up recording, okay? All right. On the ENR Generation 3, okay, there will be a section where you can actually set up the analytics of the camera itself under the camera setup. It is going to be in a future firmware release, but it will be compatible on the ENR G3, okay. As for, let's see, yeah, okay, so let's go ahead and go into the system setup now. So system setup, what we just went over was the camera setup. Now we're actually setting up the settings for the actual ENR. All right. So first things first, let's talk about users. If you click on the user group tab, you will be able to add in your individual users. Okay. So for example, if I hit add, I can put in the account and password, all right, so whatever account and password you want them to log in with, you can put in their name so that you remember who it actually belongs to, okay, confirm the password, and put in an email if you'd like, all right. So a little bit different than the previous ENRs. Right now, the only group available on the ENR G3 is the administrator group, but we are releasing a new firmware, I believe, in about a month, okay? So it should be February, towards the end of February, where you are going to be able to set up individual user groups. So more than just the admin, you can add in other user accounts, and you will be able to set up the permissions per user group, okay? So just so you guys know, it is going to take about another month for that firmware to come out, but it will be available on the ENR G3, okay? All right, let's talk about the network. So we went over the network in the basic settings, but this is basically where you can set it up in the system. So information is just the general overview, if you actually want to change the settings, come into the WAN, come into the LAN. Again, make sure that your IP addresses are in different subnets. So for example, my WAN, my router is giving 192.168.11 addresses, so it's okay for my LAN to stay 192.168.1. So it just has to be something other than 192.168.11, okay? So you put in the gateway of your router for the WAN, and your DNS server, if the customer doesn't tell you to use a particular one, you can use Google's, which is 8.8.8.8.8844. All right. I recommend that after you get a DHCP address from the router, that you go ahead and copy down from this information tab what the IP address was, what the gateway was, what the DNS server was, and then come into the WAN here, change the connection type from DHCP to manual, and input the exact same numbers that you saw on the information page. And that way, whenever the router decides to change up all the IP addresses in its table, you're still going to be able to access your ENR with the same address that you set it up with, okay? If you do need to change the LAN address of your ENR, you want to do so under the LAN tab here, okay? And so go ahead and put in the IP address, the gateway. You do not need a DNS server just because this is for your cameras, all right? So remember, there is a DHCP built in on the LAN of your ENRs that is on by default. So if you want to turn that off or change the settings, you come into the DHCP server tab here. I've turned mine off, but if it was on, it would be assigning all my cameras addresses starting with 192.168.1.100. These are DHCP addresses, not static, okay? And so, for example, if you did need to change your LAN address to something other than .1, don't forget to come into your DHCP server here and change the beginning and ending IP address. Okay, so change it there, hit save in the bottom right corner. All right, okay. If you need to change the port of your ENR, by default, HTTP port is 80, HTTPS is 443. If you need to change the HTTP port, you can do so under the setting here. You only need to port forward HTTP port in order to access your ENR remotely. Okay. All right. On the ENR G3 series, we've introduced a new functionality, the NAT. So basically, there is now internal port forwarding available through the ENR G3. Okay. Essentially, what this means is, remember how I said that the camera network and the router network need to be completely different subnets. They need to be completely physically separated. So usually, you would not be able to log into your cameras from the router network, right? But if you set up this NAT, you can log into your cameras even from the router network because it will kind of use the ENR as a bridge, all right? So as long as you've added your cameras in, etc., you'll see now that they all have this external port. Okay, so these internal ports are their HDD port, but there is an external port for you to be able to access your cameras from the other LAN, from the other network connection. Okay. So for example, right now my WAN is 192.168.11.245. I am on the WAN side of my ENR. I am not physically connected to my LAN at all. But since I have this NAT on, you'll see I have a camera here, 192.168.1.101, that is on the LAN side that usually I would not be able to get to, but now I can. So all I have to do, if you want to preview it, you can click on the magnifying glass here. It will automatically use my ENR's internal IP address plus that external port, and I will be able to log into my camera. Okay? So you can do that for all of your cameras, and that way you don't have to be plugging in your laptop on the LAN side just to get to your cameras, etc. If all you need to do is access the setup, right, you can do so using this NAT. All right, but if you need to upgrade the firmware, if you need to double check that it's still on the network, then you need to plug your laptop in on that LAN side, run the IP utility. All right, but if all you need to do is just check on some settings, you can use this NAT. All right? Okay. All right. There's also DDNS, as usual, on the ENR G3. You can use Dindis, NoIP, these other service providers. ACTi does provide its own DDNS free service as well. It's the mediacss.com. And so if you need instructions on how to set that up, there's a very nice PDF on our download center. All right. So if you just search for DDNS, it takes you step by step through how to set it up, okay? It's www.acti.com/DDNS. It tells you what to put in, how to set it up, etc. So set that up first and then turn the DDNS on in your ENR, and it will give you that host name, etc. So if you do want to set this up, make sure that you do have an ACTi account and password in our member center. If you do not, come into acti.com and click on this register button in the top right-hand corner. It takes 5 minutes. It's free. You'll be able to do, and then you'll be able to, access all of our stuff and set up that DDNS, ACTi DDNS. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and go into the storage tab. This is pretty straightforward. This is where you'll be able to format your drives. You'll be able to see whether or not they're healthy. I've intentionally put a bad drive in here just so you can see what an error message will look like. So if a drive is bad, you are going to see it say smart failed. Make sure you go out, change out the drive for your customer. Okay. Any of the, if you need to know which drive is compatible, you can always come into the ACTi website. Any page, scroll down to the bottom, come to Resources, come to Project Planner. We do have a list of recommended drives that we've tested for performance, for best performance in our MVRs. So if you come into the Project Planner, click on the hard disk selector here, and you'll be able to select based on your MVR model which drive you should be taking a look at. Okay, so we have this nice list. We have links if you want to purchase from us or if you want to take a look at those other ones. All right. Okay. If you want to hook it up to iSCSI, you can. ENR G3 does support iSCSI as well. All right. So for maintenance, this is where you can upgrade the firmware of your ENR. If you want to know what is the latest, you always type in the model of your ENR, search for software and firmware downloads for video management system, and it will tell you the latest. Because ENR G3 is fresh out, there is no firmware on the download center yet, but like I said, we are going to release a new firmware for user permissions towards the end of February. So you can check back around that time. All right? Okay. Backup files. So after you set up everything on your ENR G3, you want to make a backup file. Okay, it will save all your camera names, all the IP addresses and order and schedules, all of that. Okay, it takes 2 seconds to make, saves you so much time if anything were to ever happen. That backup file can only be made from the local monitor right now. So if you go from the HDMI local monitor of your ENR G3, come into the setup, come into maintenance, you will see backup/restore located here. Okay. All right. Logs, you'll be able to see who logged in, when, did what. All right. And if you have a joystick, you can always set up your joystick from here. Okay. Either Logitech or the IP desktop one that we carry. Okay. All right. Last but not least, let's talk about a more advanced feature in the playback. Okay. So actually, the function is available on more than just the playback, but from anywhere within the interface, actually, you can always access this event search. So again, you can always scroll through your playback. If you have your Running Man on, you can always search for a particular motion section, but you can actually have the ENR kind of filter through things for you. So if you click on this magnifying glass and click on the event search, okay, you can actually double-click on the magnifying glass once you're in the interface, and you can search for a particular event on a particular camera, etc. If you made any bookmarks as well, this is where you can search for them, okay? If you have POS connected, certain events that happened, network IO, PMS, etc. Okay, so let's say that we were looking for motion on a particular camera. I think E24 has probably a lot. So we can go ahead and click on search, and it will go ahead and list out the time and dates where motion occurred. If you just click and drag any of these motions to the screen, it will go ahead and jump to that particular date and time for you, okay? So if it's taking a while to load or whatnot, you can always use this event search in order to populate out the results for you, okay? And so on and so forth. All right. Okay, and of course, if you right-click on any of the cameras in the live view or the playback, you'll be able to see your various options, you know, creating snapshots, turning on the audio. If you want to change, you know, the formatting of how things look like, you know, unstretching, hiding the tile, etc. Okay? All right. So that's about it for the event search. Currently, the iOS and the Android mobile client does support the live and playback of the ENR G3. And eventually, the ENR G3 is going to be supported in our CMS system. So essentially, once you start having a lot of MVRs, maybe 2 or more, you want to start considering maybe using this CMS, which doesn't seem to be populating. And so that CMS link is actually available to you. I'll go ahead and write it in the chat box as well, but it is cms2.acti.com port 443. Okay, so feel free to log in to that CMS and go ahead and play around with what that interface will look like. It basically looks like your normal MVR3. Okay, if you've been using our MVR3, I can go ahead and show you guys that if you'd like. And so if you want to access any of these, it is accessible for you through your ACTi Member Center login. So if you don't have one, go ahead and register, 5 minutes and free. So what you want to do is log in with your email address and then the password that you set up. Okay. And so we have all of these already set up for you. This way you can go ahead and play around with it. So the CMS interface is very similar. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys real quick. You would have all of your cameras listed in the CMS from all of your different MVRs. So if you have 2 or more MVRs, you can go ahead and add in all of your MVRs in one place, and that way you don't have to be logging into your individual MVRs. It'll all be accessible from just one interface. You can do all of your camera settings from the CMS. You can check all the playback from the CMS. Basically, you never have to touch any of your individual MVRs or individual cameras again. It'll all be accessible from CMS, okay? And so the CMS and will be available for the ENR G3 probably towards the end of the summer, maybe June, maybe July of this year. And so once you guys do start getting the ENR G3 out onto your sites, it will be available as soon as that's the CMS version is released, okay? The CMS also does support the TV wall, so if you have multiple monitors where you display a lot of your cameras, okay, you want to go ahead and connect that up to have your TV wall server connect up to your CMS server, and that way you'll be able to manage, you know, putting different cameras from different sites onto the same TV, or having, you know, separate TVs for every site, etc. Okay? All right. That is about all oh, wait, ANS. So, right. So when we were talking about being able to send text messages to your mobile client, okay, that you can set up from the ENR as well. So you want to come into, let's see here, system, comparts, da, da, da. Okay, you want to come into your network tab, and you'll be able to see this is where you can set up your ANS server. So what you want to do, talk to your ACTi sales representative, tell them that you want text messages to your mobile client. So the ANS is actually available for NVR3, for ENRG2, anything that you want right now, even for individual cameras. So just tell them that you want it for your mobile client. Tell them how many people, how many individual phones are going to need those text messages, and how many months you want to be able to have that kind of subscription. So afterwards, when you do purchase that, you will get a particular project key, and this is where you can go ahead and set that up. So if you have an ANS key for your ENR, you'll be able to get via the event tab that I showed you, you'll be able to get mobile client notifications for any camera event that you had set up. Okay? All right. And also, if you set up an event for receiving emails, make sure you come into System here and you set up your SMTP server, okay? So here are some of the ones that we recommend, and you can go ahead and put in your email address, the correct SMTP port, authorization type, and then your email address and password to that email address for that SMTP server, okay? And you can always send a test mail here in the bottom right-hand corner just to see if it's working, all right? All right, so if there are no further questions, we will go ahead and end it here today. Thank you guys very much for joining today's ENRG3 introduction to the setup. If you do have further questions, please feel free to contact your sales representative. And I wish everyone have a great day.